Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Tony the Mole Adams YouTube channel. I'm back home from France, and seems everyone's still in France except me and Serbia. But Tony's where he was last week, and you're watching Tony the Mole Adams YouTube channel. And thanks everyone for watching the show we did last week. It's got some nice figures, so thanks for that. How are you this week, Tony?
Yeah, still wet and cold in Sydney, Steve, which I know is not the case in France and not the case in England. So it's not often we envy the climate over there, but I'm sick of Sydney winter. It's cold. And I made the mistake of playing touch football in it the other night and almost died. So
Yeah,
I'm ready for summer.
In France, I had a little bit of actually, which I haven't had in a long time, a bit of like heat stroke, like where you got headache and dehydrated, and had a couple of ice blocks like I was a 7-year-old, and I felt a lot better. But but it was no, it's, here in England it's not quite as warm, but the buildings here are kind of made for colder weather, so they've got all that cladding, and so they tend to be quite sauna-like, even though it's not quite as hot as it was in France, and definitely not as hot as Serbia. We just watched the kickoff of round 22 at the time we're recording this. Maybe by the time you watch this, there's been a couple more games played, but it reminded me West Tigers, and they were dressed up like Melbourne, but they didn't play like Melbourne. And against North Queensland, it reminded me of one of those split round nothing games from the Origin period.
Yeah, and the Tigers, they had Justin Olam sent off midway through the second half, and we thought, oh, this could be anything. And all of a sudden, the Tigers started throwing the ball around and scored 3 tries. And for a while there, the Cowboys were worried. They're still in the race, the Cowboys, but they're pretty ordinary. They're going to have to pick up. And had Olam stayed on the field, I think the Tigers would have won. And the tackle he got sent off for, I wasn't all that convinced was a send-off. I think if a little halfback did it, he would have been put in the sin bin.
Yeah, there is definitely still some. They're going to get the wooden spoon, but there's definitely some talent at West Tigers. I mean, one of the tries they scored is absolutely sensational. Lachlan Galvin threw a lovely pass, flick pass, blah, blah, blah. During Buller got a couple of tries. There's some talent there, but it's just putting the right players around that young talent, I think. It's a tough call to put the right players around them.
It is. And those 2 guys you mentioned, Buller and Galvin, I mean, they're going to be superstars. I just have an awful feeling there'll be superstars in Penrith jumpers in about 5 years' time. It seems to be the case at West Tigers.
Now let's go on to your column, and that's what we're here to talk about. Tony's columns appear every week on 9.com.au. So make sure you read the columns. That's what we're here to talk about. And you hear the stuff first if you read it first on 9.com.au. But big story this week, which has kind of spread to other outlets, but I think you were the first to report it, or among the first, was a famous Canberra WAG is in a lot of trouble. Papalii, Mrs. Papalii, she's banned from rugby league, although not from watching NRL games for a decade.
Yeah, that's right, Steve. It sounds a pretty stiff ban, but I've seen the video, and without making it too graphic, I can reveal that she ran onto the field and did some things a spectator should never do on the field, let alone a player. So it's a 10-year ban. I guess the only good news for Mrs. Papalii is she'll be able to go and see her husband's 300th game this weekend, because the ban only applies to country rugby league games, specifically Canberra rugby league games, junior rugby league games. She can go to NRL games, which is a little bit strange perhaps, but I guess they don't anticipate her running onto the field there. So, yeah, an interesting one.
Daly Cherry-Evans, there was a bit of mail before Origin 3 that he might give it away, he might give rep footy away. But now that's not going to happen, Tony?
Yeah, look, the mail I've got, he's been speaking to mates of his at Manly, and the way he's looking at it, he's got unfinished business. He doesn't want to go out a loser. He turns 36 next February, I think, so he's not a youngster anymore. I think he's the oldest guy in the NRL from memory, and everyone assumed he was going to play on one last season. He's got one more year on his Manly contract. And it was just assumed he was going to step down from Origin footy. But he's telling his mates, I've still got the hunger, I've still got the passion. But the question I posed in the column is he might want to play for Queensland, but will Queensland think, well, maybe it's time for a change of direction? Sam Walker's knocking on the door. There's no doubt he's the future. It's just a question of when they throw him in there.
Now, we should have heard about this by now. Maybe by the time the readers and viewers see this, it'll be confirmed one way or another. But Liam Knight to Leeds, is that happening? What's the story there?
Yeah, look, I'm not sure where it's at the moment, but I can confirm from his management that they've approached the Bulldogs and asked for a release. Leeds want to get him on board for the remainder of the season, similar to the John Bateman situation. A little bit different in that Liam's actually off contract at the end of the year. So I think if he goes all right with Leeds, he might get himself a long-term deal there. And when you consider he's only had 2 games for the Bulldogs this season, I can't see any good reason that the Bulldogs would want to keep him. So it's one to watch out for. He's 28 years old. He's been a fair 29. Sorry, he's been a fair footballer over the years. Tough man. I think Super League and Leeds might suit him.
You've got an item in your column about a player who has already agreed to leave his current club and is refusing to train, and they can't wait to see the back of him. Can you tell us any more?
I can't reveal his name. I can tell you it's from an out of Sydney club. I can tell you he's a forward, so that should narrow it down a fair bit. But there's probably, I don't know, 10 to 20 players who've already signed away their futures for next season. So if you go through the list, you might be able to work it out. But yeah, his teammates aren't happy. He's basically dogging it at training, and as you can imagine, it hasn't gone down well.
I've got a question for you on this item. Try to pin you down. Have you mentioned this player before in an item where you similarly did not name him over anything else?
Yes. I might have, yes.
Yes, there you go. There you go. There you go. Oh, I can't help you. I can't help you, viewers and listeners and readers, any more than that. I did my best. In your column, you always give us the name of an up and coming young player around the NRL. You should call it something. Call this item something, because every week there is a young player who most of the viewers wouldn't have heard of. Tell us about Heath Mason.
I should get myself a sponsor for this item, shouldn't I, Steve?
Yeah, Norwich Rising Star or something. Yeah.
Yes. Well, the difference with this one is I think quite a few of our viewers, listeners, whatever, will have heard of Heath Mason in that he has played a bit of NRL. He was actually the Tigers' 18th man today. So if 3 or 4 Tigers had got knocked out, he would have got on the field, but it didn't happen. But look, he's straight out of school. He's an Australian schoolboy last season. So meteoric rise to first grade. I think he's played 3 or 4 games. Little utility player, very zippy, quick off the mark. And the Tigers are sick of losing their good young players, so they're looking at upgrading and extending him. So that's one to look out for in the next few weeks.
That's it, everybody. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if I could plug anything this week, because in case this, we've got to get starting to build a decent audience here. So rugbyleague.com, 24-hour rugby league news. So and rugby league talk and a bit of music and Jason Costigan every hour. So that's it. That's it, Tony. And he does a good job, Jason, as well. Tony,
he's a good man, Costa.
He's a good man. Good man. We'll see you next week.
Sounds good, Steve.
Don't forget.